Welcome back to another episode of The Common Theory. And as always, I'm your host, Chris, along with my man, Dallas. And as you guys could see, I am not visibly here today. Having a little bit of technical difficulties today. We have some pretty nasty weather out here in Florida at the moment. So you'll just have to appreciate my alligator card. So But besides that, we have some very interesting topics for you guys today, and I'm very excited to get to those things. But before we get to that, how you doing, man?
Oh, not too shabby. I got spring break coming up, so I've got some exams before then, so got some schoolwork coming up this week, but nothing too crazy. Life's been pretty chill. What about you?
Man, I haven't been able to complain. I've been really enjoying myself out here. Weather's been beautiful. Obviously, not today, but in general, it's been really nice. But you know, getting my popper game on, getting my CEDH game on, so I've been having a great time.
For sure, for sure. But yeah.
But with that said, why don't you take us away and let them know what we're going to be talking about? And yes, Puzzle is the perfect person to be talking about what this topic is.
All right, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and start on our deep dive into combo. Combo in general, combo in the format, some specific combo decks, and things of that nature. This will probably be a two-parter for you guys. And today we're just going to be talking about combos in general, some of the more difficult combos to understand in the format, some of the more deck specific ones. And then later in our second part, we're going to go a lot more in depth into specific scenarios and situations with some of the most popular decks, what you're likely to see, and talking about how you should interact, how you should interpret those board states, and really understand where the combo decks are coming from, and maybe how close they are to actually comboing off. So, is there a specific deck you want to take a look at first here, Chris?
So we have a few ones we're going to kind of elaborate on for you guys, but honestly, let's just start with the one that's near and dear to your heart. Let's just start with Gretchen. I think it's the easiest one to really pick apart and say, if they don't have this, they're not comboing off, kind of thing.
Yeah. So, to start with, you guys, we're gonna kind of glaze over some of the really simple combos, like Freed from the Real in Gretchen. It is very easy to tell if this is going to win them the game, right? Do they have a land that produces blue and one of any color? Do they have an untapper in play that is not summoning sick? And do they have a card in hand? Then you could be dead. Um, it's really as simple as that with specifically Freed from the Real. And Galvanic Alchemist is exactly the same, except it costs 3 mana to untap. So that one is just, do they have a land that makes 4 mana? So those are very simple. Obviously, game states dictate chances of them having combos and so on and so forth. But today we want to talk about some of the more difficult board states to interpret with Gretchen specifically, being combo lines that involve a Boro Breeze Collar and Immobilizing Ink. These are a bit more difficult to comprehend from an outside perspective than Freed from the Real, because both of these lines actually require Gretchen to be in play and involve using Gretchen to utilize them. So, in the instance of a Boro Breeze Collar, you have to pay 2 mana and return a land from the field to your hand as cost to activate its ability, which is to untap a land. So, this is the untapper, and it does not need to have haste in any way, shape, or form. You can just play it and start untapping lands, which is what makes this really potent. However, the ability does cost 2 mana, and Gretchen is going to cost 2 green and a blue to activate, so 4 mana. So, in total, your abilities cost 6 mana. And for those of you who don't know by now, Gretchen's ability is to draw a card and put a land from your hand into play. So, for this combo to be set up, it requires a lot more mana to come off of a single land than with the other combos. So you need a land that produces 5 mana on its own, and then a land that comes into play untapped and produces 1 mana to even go neutral in mana on this. If you want to go mana positive, your land is going to have to tap for 6, because what you're going to do is, let's say it taps for 5 mana. We'll tap it for 5 mana and tap our extra land. Let's say it's just a forest. So now we have 6 mana. And then we bounce our forest with a Boros Breezecaller, paying 2 mana, down to 4, and untap our land. And then we pay our last 4 mana into activating Gretchen. We'll draw a card and put that forest back into play. And now we're back in the same spot, except we've plussed 1 card. So for this to go mana positive, obviously the land has to tap for more mana. Or it could be a situation where the land you're bouncing back to your hand is a island, and you've cast High Tide that turn, in which case it now taps for 2 and comes into play untapped. Things of that nature. But essentially, it requires a lot of setup, but all they need to have at that point is a Boros Breezecaller, quote unquote.
So I got to interrupt you here real quick. If you guys aren't noticing, this is very dry things that we're going to be talking about for this one. But it's very important for us to really get this across and really get this out there, because there's a lot of situations during games where it's like, let's point the finger at one of these decks and say they have the combo. Now, this could be just a player just trying to like get the heat off of them and stuff, right? But what if the player just doesn't know it and they're assuming that, yes, Puzzle has the ability to win the game right now if they draw a Boros Breezecaller? Now, the math, in my opinion, is relatively simple. In fact, I think it's very simple. But even listening to Puzzle talking right now, it's a bit complicated overall. And, I can understand why it is a bit more difficult to understand why this is kind of complicated. So it kind of brings us to the point of it's math, right? We're going to figure out, can this player do it? What does it take if the top deck isn't a Boros Breezecaller? Similar to High Tide lines, similar to things of that nature. So, but continue.
I think to that extent, one thing that I've had come up in a lot of games is I'll go to, say, Transmute Muddle the Mixture. And a lot of people will go, can he win? And first off, it requires them to have knowledge of the deck and understand what my untappers are. And then they'll realize that my untapper choices at 2 mana are a Boros Breezecaller, or some lists are playing Immobilizing Ink. Some are not. But, they have to understand that. They have to know what I'm going for, and then they have to be able to figure out if that actually wins the game. So, what we're kind of getting at here is, how do you actually evaluate if I can win the game if you see me go for this? And in the case of a Boros Breezecaller, it sounds complicated, but it's really not. Do I have 2 lands that tap for 6/7 mana combined, essentially? One that taps for a lot more than the other. But yeah, it's just being able to see that. And with Immobilizing Ink, if you don't know, it's very similar to Gretchen and a Boros Breezecaller, except you have to have an untapper in play already. And for Immobilizing Ink, you pay 1 mana and discard a card to untap the creature. So It's easier to go mana positive. You only need a land that taps for 6 to go mana positive, but you're not going card positive at all. Um, so in that case, you're just kind of filtering until you build up enough mana that you can go for you're freed from the reel or something of that nature. Go for another line. But yeah, both of these scenarios require Gretchen to have a land that taps for a lot of mana. So if they don't have that set up, it could be a threatening thing that they're tutoring the Abora Breeze color. And I'm not saying don't be concerned about Gretchen tutoring Abora Breeze color. Obviously, that's a concerning thing. But is it going to win the game on the spot is the thing you have to think about. Like, how concerning is it? Or maybe if they're transmuting Muddle the Mixture, they're going for a bounce spell. Or some piece of interaction, which I've done many, many times. Or just a value piece. So you really have to understand how these decks win before you can start just like diving in and pointing the finger, kind of like Chris was saying there.
Yeah, I mean it's really important to figure out, like, drawing cards does not win the game. Like that, I think everyone could agree that drawing the cards isn't winning the game. I have been in many, many matches where I have lost with a full grip of cards. Not too often anymore, but in general, I've seen that quite a bit here recently with a lot of players where they just lose the game with a grip of 7 in hand. So I think we can definitively say that drawing cards will not win you the game. It's like gaining infinite life. That does not win you the game. So there are certain things that here, yes, is this play concerning? Do we need to make sure that we keep an eye on them? Because they're moving their game plan forward. This is just a standard action of a forward momentum that the deck is portraying, which in theory, all decks should also have this if you're playing in a competitive setting. All the decks at the table should be moving in a forward momentum to win the game. So this is just this deck's way of doing that action. But with that said, what else you got for Gretchen for us? Or are we moving on to the next one?
Um, I suppose if we want to touch on the freed stuff just like briefly, we can just say it's really as simple as if you see them tutor freed from the reel, do they have an untapper that's in play and not summoning sick? That's the biggest thing. Like a lot of times people will be like, "Oh, well, you could have freed, you could win next turn," or something like that, and it's like, sure, but I don't have an untapper in play, so that requires me to have. If there's no untapper in play, a freed line requires the untapper in hand, the freed in hand, the lands and mana to make it actually go infinite. And then Gretchen specifically is gonna need like a Strider harness. Because there's not many ways to give haste. Um, Now Gretchen has workarounds once again because the deck's busted, and like if people are playing Hydroform or cards that turn the land into a creature, then that skips the whole haste issue and the untapper, but is much more fragile, yada yada. Um, but effectively the same thing, right? Like it requires at least those pieces to be built up in hand, not to mention playing through any interaction, so on and so forth. So we're just really driving the nail in to think about the game state before you start getting really scared, which can help you understand when you need to hold up mana for interaction and things of that nature, and when you can develop your own game plan, right?
Very much so. I mean, but that's the point, right? Like, we're trying to make it to where the fear is trying to leave you guys. Like, just not be like, oh my gosh, I'm playing against Gretchen. This deck is terrifying. Well, your deck should be terrifying as well. And your deck should also be able to handle them. So when they're doing this action, why not talk to the table and be like, hey guys, I just saw them tutor for freed from the Rio. But they don't have a land untapper. They don't have a Strider harness. Why are they getting this? looks like they're not. We shouldn't be afraid at all until these next steps start to happen. As soon as the Lane and Tapper comes out, that's I think where we could go. All right, guys, we have a turn to get rid of this card and move forward with the game. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one other interesting thing is like taking into consideration how long a combo piece has been in play and or public knowledge in hand. Um, like if Gretchen has had a land tap untapper sitting in play for like 3 turns, honestly, I feel like there's some debatability to this statement, but like if the land untapper has been sitting in play for 3 turns and the game hasn't ended yet, then Gretchen is probably very much still working to find that win condition. Now, can they draw into it at any point in time? Yes. Especially if they have the land that taps for 2, 3, even 4 mana. It's quite possible. But the untapper is a lot scarier on the turn it's cast, and Gretchen has a land that taps for 4. That's a much bigger threat to me that you need to deal with, rather than the untapper that's just been sitting there and has been digging and digging. Obviously, you've seen more cards, so you're more likely to find that combo and potentially have interaction to protect it. But it also means, like, you haven't gone for it, right?
Exactly.
So there can also just be interaction or redundancy for, like, your ramp and stuff in that hand. And those are the things that you have to take into account. And, like, how many land drops they've played. Are they flooded? Are they mana starved? Things of that nature.
Yep. Exactly. Because I mean, it's so important to like actually realize, be like, hey, they've had Gretchen in play, or let's just say not Gretchen, Lane and Tapper in play for 5 turns, played draw go. If they had the ability to win the game, I don't see why they haven't tried to do it at this point. Which would kind of point you in direction. I bet they've drawn a whole grip of counter spells or a whole grip of like controlling the field, so they're drawing the wrong half of their deck. But now we know because they're not taking game actions. Okay, guys, we got to figure out what's happening here, and we figured it out. If they had the ability to win the game, most likely they would have gone for it at this point.
Yeah. And in specifically Gretchen's situation, is it going to be scary when they draw the combo piece finally? Yes. But if no one else has done anything meaningful, you're probably not going to be able to stop them at that point, right? Like, they're just going to have a group of counter spells because they never had to do anything. And then it doesn't even matter that you've been scared the entire time because they'll just bully through the 3 pieces of interaction that the table has collectively, right? Like,
Well, I mean,
it's a tough one.
you kind of brought up a really interesting point that I wanted to touch upon, and this is one of the reasons that we're doing this for you guys to begin with. You just said it. They didn't do anything that was kind of meaningful, so you didn't have to use your counter spells. So if the collective table is just kind of like bobbing and weaving around each other, but yet not ever trying to attempt to win the game themselves, what kind of game dynamic have we gone into? Like, what are we even looking at as a whole? And I think that may be an underlying larger issue here, but I just wanted to touch upon it real quick so you guys kind of notice that that can be a possibility. Because if Gretchen's just kind of like lingering and just kind of hanging out with everybody, when it wins the game, I don't believe that should be an issue, right? Because if it wins the game on turn 15, what was everybody else doing at this table? So,
Yeah, and that becomes like a really interesting dynamic in like heavy blue pods, especially. And like referencing meta from 2, 3 years ago, whenever Tatiova was the beast, this would happen a lot. As I'm sure you guys have all heard from many different content creators over the past few years. It was very often that there would be a standoff of 2 to 3 Tatiovas just staring each other down, and no one wants to commit to combo because as soon as someone tries, all hell breaks loose. Um, and those game states are very real and can happen, especially in those blue heavy pods. Um,
Completely agree.
but with that, want to talk about Tatiova?
Yes, I would love to talk about Tatiova. You know what's okay? Let me hit you with this one. This used to be the boogeyman of the format, and it has fallen off so hard that people remember the name, but people don't remember what it even does. They're just like, oh yeah, Tatiova's has combos. Oh, what kind of combo does it have? Um, well, something landfall. Uh, uh.
And yeah, like that's so insane
So
to
I'm
me.
so happy because
Go ahead, go ahead. Oh, or maybe we
so
lost you.
part of our internet.
All right, he's cutting out, but yeah, Gator's having some internet issues, so pardon any awkwardness. But yeah, it's insane to me that Tatiova is kind of in that state right now because, like, obviously, we like to talk down on Tatiova, mainly because it was the boogeyman for so long, and it's just not at that status anymore. That people were just way too scared of it, and it is still a very strong deck. The combo is very difficult to interact with, and still plenty strong. Um, but yeah, like you can't just forget about Tatiova. Are you back, Chris?
I am back.
All right, we can
Yes.
hear you now. Continue.
Yes. No. What I was trying to say was the whole we've forgotten about Tatiova, but we've forgotten about it so much that we don't even remember any of its combo lines. Like none of them. So it's like, what kind of deck is it? It's a ghostly flicker deck. Like, and it's kind of one of those fun things that it's just like, how's it at comboing? Oh, I have no idea. And and yes, you're right. By the way, it, we like to talk kind of negatively about it here on the channel because it was such a boogeyman for so long. And let's be honest, it's just kind of like, whatever. But I've been playing it here locally, and I am smashing people in the dirt because they have no fear of it at all. They're like, it's 5 mana. Abdel's way scarier. Gretchen's better. Weavers are better. And they just leave me alone. That's
Yeah,
kind of like, don't leave me alone, guys. Like, I'm a deck with lands. Like, my deck revolves around lands. Come on. Work
yeah.
with
I
us here.
mean, similar. It's kind of like the hybrid of Gretchen and Abdel, right? Big
Yep.
commander, but wow, the value is insane. You you can't ignore it. Like I don't care how much we talk negatively about it. It is still a beast if left unchecked. Absolutely. And it's Simic with mana and card draw. It's gonna have interaction. The deck is not bad by any means. Um,
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm gonna touch upon this, you guys. So we might not talk about all the different lines here in this episode, but the next episode is going to be the actual breakdown of every single combo line. So you have to bear with us, but we're making sure that you will know every combo line from all of these stacks, and you will always be able to refer back to them. So definitely be ready for that one. But like specifically Tatiova, this deck is very well. We have high tide lines, we have Archaeomancer lines, we have what are those creatures called? There's some weird name on Scryfall for these little like
um,
untap put land into play thingies.
as far as
Like
I'm aware, people call them land idiots.
Yeah.
But they're the creatures that. So instead of a mana dork, which taps for mana, these creatures tap to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So they're mini Gretchens. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, they're weird little guys, but those little guys, they are the only creatures that enable, with Tatiova specifically, the Tidal Bore combo. So what you guys will learn, and especially about what we're talking about as a whole, is that a lot of these combos are deck specific. We don't have the Thoracle Demonic Consultation combo in our format. We have deck specific. When we talk about Tatiova, Tidobor is going to be for Tatiova, right? Alboro is going to be for Gretchen. Ingenious Artillerist is going to be for Malcolm, right? All of these are going to be deck specific, and we're here to break them down so you can learn them, so we could get rid of that fear of the unknown. So, very happy about this. But
Yeah,
starting starting to go away, internet issues again. If you can hear me, take it away.
yeah. So Tatiova specifically, those land idiot combo lines with Tidal Bore often, not often, they do involve the Tidal Bore returning Mystic Sanctuary to hand and untapping the Mana Idiot, and then tapping that to put the Mystic Sanctuary back into play, which triggers both Tatiova to draw a card and gain a life, and the Mystic Sanctuary to put the Tidal Bore back on top of your deck. So then it draws you the Tidal Bore back, and then you can loop that, gain infinite life, and, if you have High Tide, you're netting mana off that, things of that nature.
Well,
Or I guess
let
you
me
don't
ask.
need the High Tide. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
you're
you
netting
don't.
infinite blue on your own because the Mystic Sanctuary comes in untapped. Um, so yeah, it's infinite blue and infinite life off of that, and then you have to find some way to win off that.
Yeah, I mean, you draw your whole deck, right? So you're good to go.
Yeah, so
But let me ask you this one. That's a lot of cards,
yeah,
right? We're
like
talking
how many
about
cards are we talking
Mystic
about?
Sanctuary. Exactly. Like Mystic Sanctuary, Tidobor, Lane Idiot, and Tatiova.
And
Like,
5 mana commander.
yeah,
Um, and the mana idiot can't have summoning sickness, which I don't think Tatioma plays anyway to give them haste at all. So it
it does not.
has to be in play. And obviously, Tatiova still has other lines, right? You can do Ghostly Flicker stuff with the Mystic Sanctuary or an Archaeomancer and ways to net mana. You can do normal Flicker stuff, obviously. But we want to talk about some of the more specific stuff because that's what people are afraid of, right? Like, they see a Tidal Bore and they go, oh god, we're gonna die this turn. And I don't know, are you? Like, there's a lot of pieces.
But that's the problem, right? The combos in our format are all a lot of pieces. This fear of the unknown has overtaken a lot of people. And I want to make sure to be like, hey, guys, 4 cards. Malcolm's in play. Malcolm is a combo piece. No, Malcolm literally makes mana.
He is a combo piece. He is absolutely a combo piece. You cannot deny that. But
Yes. Agreed.
yeah, like he's there. So like Malcolm specifically and Tatiova are kind of in the same boat, and Gretchen's land untappers. The thing that makes these decks strong is that their combo pieces are not just combo pieces, right? Like in Gretchen's case with the untappers and Malcolm's case with Malcolm, those are combo pieces that provide mana acceleration while you're getting to your combo, which is very valuable. Tatyova is a combo piece that draws cards and gains life. So these are value combo pieces that are really powerful because of that nature of the fact that we don't have like good card advantage engines in our format really. Um, so they're combo pieces that need to be dealt with, but they're also value engines that debatably should probably be dealt with too. Um, but you know, you can't just go around bolting every Malcolm every time it's cast, right? So you gotta be able to look at the board state and the game state and understand, is it worth it to bolt the Malcolm on turn 2 or turn 3 every time it comes down?
Yeah, I completely agree because it's one of those things, right? Like one of the things I love to talk about here is if you have now, this is not a very hot topic here, but I'm gonna bring it up anyways. Is if you have some of the larger decks of the format, I like to call them the Titans. You know, kind of what me and you say. Let's just use Malcolm and Gretchen, right? We could say like a Malcolm and Gretchen deck are pretty much the top of the format. Me and you agree on that, right? So we'll use those as the example. If you have both of them at the table, they very much balance each other out. I mean, you agree with that?
Yeah, to an extent. Like, those two decks are probably going to focus each other pretty hard compared to the rest of the table, depending on pod composition, obviously.
Of
Um,
course, of
but
course.
I think typically what we've seen uh, throughout the years is that these decks that are widely regarded as more powerful or more popular or whatever the case may be, they do tend to draw a lot more heat
Correct.
from both each other
Correct.
and the rest of the table.
Correct. And without one of them existing to stop the other one existing, you fall into this premise to where you've destroyed one of them, and then the other one gets the free reign because it goes, haha, I lost my contender. I can handle with the other ones. And then the big contender, whether it is Malcolm, whether it's Gretchen, right? If you just like nuke everything that Gretchen has off the planet, and you're just like, I'm gonna leave the Malcolm alone, and Malcolm gets all of his treasures and does a thing, Gretchen can't stop the Malcolm from winning. And vice versa, right? If Malcolm just gets bolted, like you said, off the planet and just never develops anything and it's just like sitting there spinning its wheels trying to survive, it can't stop the Gretchen from doing anything because it's bolts. It's not looking for bolts. It's looking for mana to try to play Malcolm. It's looking for this, trying to just survive, not getting, destroyed. So it's very important that when you look at these bigger combo decks, understanding, just like Puzzle was saying earlier, what pieces they need. How much mana is this land going to produce? How much of this is this going to produce? And go from there.
Yeah, I think like a lot of times in Malcolm's case, it's probably right to bolt Malcolm, but you have to understand the commitment you're making there because yes, you are denying value resources from a player, and that's obviously good. Same thing with Gretchen. Like, it is generally a good thing to bolt the untapper that they play on turn 2, right? It removes a lot of mana from Gretchen over the course of the game by doing that. But while you are obviously reducing their ability to win the game, you're also reducing their ability to interact because now they have to develop more resources to, or commit more resources to developing. So you have to understand when you're committing to the right things and when you're over committing. Because, yeah, sometimes you'll have games where there's a Malcolm and a Gretchen, and the Gretchen gets every single land untapper that they play bolted because it's Gretchen, right? Like, you have to. And then, as soon as the control player is through bolting all of the Gretchen stuff, and the aggro player beats them down because they're teaming up on the Gretchen. And then the Gretchen dies, and immediately the Malcolm player's like, all right, everyone's. The two players that are left have committed all their resources to the third player, and the third player is dead, so they're not going to do anything to me. And I'll just do the thing. And this is true for any two decks that are like in this situation, right? Two combo decks specifically is typically the scenario. One gets focused down by the two non-combo players, and then the second combo player just wins. Um, which is a really tough situation to figure out how to navigate in the first place, much less what, you know, with specific decks is the right play and seed order and what the other two decks are, yada yada. Very difficult to navigate, but is definitely something worth talking about because it will happen a lot. Combo is not like leaving the format. I don't care what anyone says. Combo is going to exist in this format for a long time, in my opinion, if not the entirety of the format.
I completely agree with that. Like, combo is incredibly powerful in our format, but let's be honest, it is very hard to develop. And if you see the pieces that are needed to develop this, you could figure it out. And this is why we're here bringing this again. We're going to hammer this home for you guys because I can't say it enough. If you don't want to play the deck to learn it, we are here. We're going to tell you how it functions so you know, so you don't have to play with it. Like, that's kind of where we're at, right? You don't want to play with that deck? Don't play it. We'll tell you how that deck functions, and that's what we're going to be doing. So, there's a bunch of fringe decks out there too that have combo things. One specific deck that's very fringe on the format is Rocco. We have tried to do it. I have tried to do it. I think the deck is mediocre at best, but it has disturbing amounts of capabilities of comboing.
Yeah, I mean, the options are insane. The consistency is definitely there. It's just, it's very explosive, but, yeah, it's not very good at protecting itself or interacting with the rest of the table in most of the builds that we've seen.
Exactly, exactly. So we're going to be diving into all of these decks. In fact, comment down below on this video for the part 2 of this episode where we literally dive into every combo line of all of these decks. Let us know what decks you want to see.
For sure.
Like, we even have a new one in the format. Lobert actually created a new deck, Sphinx Summoner, which has a very cool Ashnod's combo in the deck.
Oh, you think that's
And
a new deck? Oh, no. The baby. That deck's existed
well,
for years. But anyways, continue.
well, no. So the deck existed, but it has newer cards, right? Like, a lot of the cards that are in the deck are newer prints, right? Like, all of the cards that say filter the mana, right, into colors. Like, those are all newer cards from like Mom and all those other cards, right?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't have those before. So it does get new lines and it has more redundancy than it's ever had before. Yes, the deck isn't new, but the cards that it has available for it are allowing for more redundancy purposes. So
For
let's
sure.
just say in the past it had one card, now it
Yeah,
has
it was never
three,
amazing, but it
right?
did exist.
Yeah, yeah, it did
Uh,
exist. Come on, let me give it the benefit of the doubt, bro. Don't come on, man. Work with me here. Gosh. But I I think it's relevant to talk about, right? Like, one deck that me and you, and I'm gonna bring this deck up because I think me and you know this deck like the back of our hand at this point. In fact, let's see how good me and Puzzle are with how much we know each other. Mono blue. What deck am I talking about?
3, 2, 1. Scholar of the Ages. Oh, you were supposed to say
Yeah,
it at the same time. It's gonna be a
I
cute thing.
well, I tried to. Can you hear me?
I can now. We didn't get to hear you say the deck, but I'm gonna
Oh, I
trust
was
that you
literally
said Scholar.
okay. I was literally trying to say it. Um, oh, blink. I think I'm blanking out again.
We can hear you
Okay,
right now.
internet. Okay, internet issues, guys. We apologize. But yes, Scholar of Ages. If you didn't hear me say what Puzzle did, I literally tried. But yes, people still don't know the way that deck functions. And since day one, we have spoken about how that is like one of the trinity of monocolor decks. Can you hear me?
Yep, yep, you're good.
Oh,
Keep going.
okay. One of the trinity of monocolor decks that we talk about, that if you don't know how this deck works, you will lose to it. The deck is good. And if you don't understand how it functions, you lose every game against it because it's that consistent. I mean, we've demonstrated that with Dargo at this point. Like, you know, like, what do you got for us, bro? What do you
Yeah,
got?
I mean, we've got plenty of other decks that we can talk about too, obviously. We've got Melik, which is extremely underrepresented. Doesn't see much play out of what I've seen, but has got some really cool stuff. Some cool like pseudo one card combos. They're really two card combos, but um, got some cool stuff with that. Um, we could try to talk about Teshar. um, that one would be a
Oh,
bit of a mess, but we could
I,
try.
I'm here to talk about it, bro. We're gonna break them all down. We're breaking these all down, guys. You have the two perfect people to break these decks down. We're gonna break them all down. You're gonna have to deal with a 2.5 hour video of us breaking them down. But we're gonna put the cards up on the screen. Just be prepared for round two of this
Yeah,
because this is just our
massive,
overview.
massive primer essentially for every combo line of whatever deck we can think of. It's gonna be
Or
some.
give it to us in the comment section below, guys. Tell us a deck that you want to know how it combos. Rocco has how many combo lines does Rocco have? What, like 18? Like some
He's
disgusting
got
number?
options. He's got options.
Like some disgustingly disturbing amount of options Rocco has. We're gonna break them down. Like, just let us know. We will do it. If you guys want us to partner with some of these people, guys, reach out to Lobert. Tell him we're doing this video. Tell him to get his ass over here and talk about freaking Sphinx Summoner. We are about it. We don't mind. We are here. We want you guys to understand how these decks work. That is the goal. Don't kill the Tatiova player when they're spinning their wheels and you need them to stop the other combo player, right? We want that to be a thing. We want all the players to try to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, any other closing thoughts from you?
My last closing thoughts again, guys. I understand we were all over the place in this video. That is the point with this one. We're trying to be everywhere. We're talking about these crazy combo decks. We're kind of doing it all. The next one is going to be very thorough. We're breaking them down. We're going to have a sheet for you guys. You're going to be able to see all the combo lines. We're creating it as we even speak. And we're going to be very happy to bring that to you guys. But let us know. Reach out to players. If you know certain players that you want to have with us, I mean, you guys know Mizu. He won with Scholar of the Ages. You want him to be here, talk about that deck, say it's combo lines? We'll bring him on. We'll talk about it. You want to bring on that puzzle guy, that dude that knows Gretchen really well? We'll bring that guy on. What do you think, bro?
Yeah,
Do we bring that guy
absolutely.
on?
I think we can get a hold of him. Uh, but yeah,
But with that said, that's all I got. Hopefully, you guys could still hear me because I know I'm in and out, and I apologize for that. And then, yeah, take us home, my bro.
All right. Thank you guys for watching today. Be sure to, like we said, leave decks, leave whatever down in the comments below so we know what you guys are looking for and what decks. And we will try to make a big, comprehensive list. Make sure to like the video if you haven't already, and subscribe while you're down there if you have not as well. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time.